Bridge monthly Board of Finance meeting for Thursday, March 20th. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any public comments? No? Okay. Then the second item is the presentation of the Amity 2014-2015 budget. And we have several Amity representatives here, but the presenter will be our new superintendent. For those of you who haven't met him, it's, excuse me if I don't say this right, Chip Dumais?
Dumais.
Dumais, okay, it's close. And Chip is going to present the budget, and with that, we also have here Jack Levine. Of course, we all know Jack. And we actually have the chairman of the Amity Board, Bill Blake, and the chairman of the Finance Committee, Jamie Sterling. So, I'm drawing a blank. Okay.
Wait, one more person.
Director of Curriculum.
Yeah, curriculum director. He's right. Could somebody just kill those lights over there? Okay.
All set?
Yep.
Is it preferred that I sit or can I stand?
Whatever makes you comfortable, Chip.
Oh, fantastic. I prefer to stand then, if that's okay. Thanks.
It's fine with us.
Thank you very much for having me this evening. When I was offered the position by the Amity Board of Education, one of the first pieces that we discussed would be when to start. And knowing that it would be in the middle of budget season was actually something that was very appealing to me. Not necessarily in terms of jumping in and having to present somebody else's budget, but in terms of presenting the budget or preparing a budget and being prepared to present a budget, there I think are three critical elements. One is education, knowing the law, knowing the mechanics of a budget, knowing other pieces. One is experience, knowing how those pieces go together, and the last piece is context. And the context piece is one that I didn't have. But in learning the values and beliefs, commitments of a district, the best way is to go through the budget process. So this is a great opportunity for me to learn a lot about the district and what's important through going through what this team of people has already put months of work into preparing. So thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm representing the Amity Board of Education, excuse me, representing Bethany, Orange, and Woodbridge. Also, the Amity Board of Finance. As I just said, budget is really about values, beliefs, commitments, and Amity has demonstrated over the years that offering excellent educational programs and services are a priority. Doing that in a fiscally responsible way, I hope that doesn't shut down on me in the middle here. Doing that in a fiscally responsible way is something that Amity has definitely demonstrated its ability to do. Amity is part of DIRG-B. DIRG is Demographic Resource Group, and it's essentially a socioeconomic measure of where schools are. So DIRG-A is the box in the top. There are 9 districts in Connecticut that make up DIRG-A, and DIRG-B is the box in the bottom. There are 21 districts that make up DIRG-B. The reason that I put this up here is that when you take a look at the most recent state data on the performance of school districts, the state started to put in place what are called SPI, School Performance Indices, and it gives a good indication of how people are doing based on some of their standardized test scores, graduation rates, and other factors that go into schools. If you take a look at this list, those schools that just went into italics all have some school in their district that was performing at what the state considers an excelling level. Now that's about 1,000 different schools that we're talking about between elementary, middle, and high school. When we talk just about the high school, there are only 6 districts out of those 30 that have high schools that the state considers to be excelling. And district number 5, Amity, is one of them. That means that out of the 206 or so high schools in the state of Connecticut that they're looking at, we are in the top 15. There's no question that Amity's performance in academics has been exemplary. Now, without going into a history, we do have a packet prepared for you. And what I'd like to say is that in terms of saving money, one of the money-saving opportunities that the district is taking advantage of is automatically shutting down all of the computers in the district so that they're not on overnight. Jack, how much have we?
$50,000 a year.
There you go.
But at this point, I'm wishing we hadn't done it for today. You just have to reboot it again.
Yeah, Jack, do you want to hand out the packets and we'll work off paper if that's okay with you. Okay. I apologize.
We're experiencing it in real time. No?
Thank you. What Jack's handing out is a copy of the slides, and in addition to the slides, what you'll also find in there are some sections of text that will expand on some of the things that I'm about to say. Can I have one? I'll use this one. Can I have this one? No. So while that's getting going, if you would go ahead and join me in turning to page 32. On page 32, as I was just saying, it's no question that Amity's performance in the area of academics has been outstanding. That I have only been here 3 weeks. In the past 3 weeks, we've had a young man who has qualified for the state geography bee. As an example, I'm going to talk about some of those things that have happened just in the short time that I have actually been serving as the superintendent. In terms of our performance on the advanced placement tests, in terms of our performance on standardized tests, Amity is performing at the highest of the DIRG. In terms of CMT, Amity is performing at the highest of the DIRG when we compare middle school performance. 94% college acceptance rate. We are preparing our students to be college and career ready. There are students who don't go to college, who go on to some alternative secondary experience, but my experience in DIRG A and DIRG B schools, 94% is very high in terms of a college acceptance rate. Our students are being accepted to some of the best schools. In the arts, if you haven't already gotten your tickets, you'll certainly want to get your tickets in a week or two for In the Heights. In the last 3 weeks, the time that I've been here, and I apologize, I'm just trying to get this thing back going here. We have had finalists in the Young Artist Competition in terms of music. We've had finalists in the state competition in terms of photography just in the past 3 weeks. Our students perform really well. If you take a look at the next page, athletics, there's no question that Amity athletics and academics, arts, and athletics, the three important pieces of an education at Amity. In the last 3 weeks, our girls basketball team made it to the quarterfinals in the state tournament, and this Friday night, the boys hockey team will be participating in the finals. Not a bad winter. Do you want to try to switch back to the screen?
Sure.
All right. Amity students take pride in their community. This is just a short list of the community service efforts that our students have taken advantage of over the last year. I don't know of any community service efforts in the last 3 weeks. Otherwise, I would share that with you. Aside from what we're offering students, we still have to operate a school district. And within operating that school district, the leadership team and central office have taken a number of measures to make sure that we're doing it in the most efficient way. We continue to take a look at any opportunity to reduce costs. We have, after of course a history years ago of financial concerns, our audits for 4 consecutive years have been clean. In addition to doing that, with increased safety and security concerns across the country, we have increased the safety and security measures at all of the schools. We recently implemented a new student information system. So in addition to what we had before, we've transferred over to what's called Power School, a better way to track student data and communicate with families. And recently applied for and received almost $187,000 in a state grant to upgrade some of our infrastructure. I'm sure that you're aware that the lean budgets over the years were one that took money away from technology. This was an opportunity without spending a tremendous additional amount of money to upgrade some of our technology infrastructure. In developing a budget, there are certain pieces that we are required to pay for, and those are the first pieces that become the foundation of this process. Unfunded and underfunded state and federal mandates. How do we continue to offer the excellent programs that we have, add programs that might be of interest or might be required? We'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about enrollment. And lastly, how do we do that while maintaining the lowest cost possible in implementing those programs? This is an extremely collaborative effort. The process begins 8 to 10 months ahead of time at the school level, goes from the school level, teachers to the departments to school leaders to central office, and then central office continues to work on this budget. And it's still going on in the schools right now. As we speak, right now, one of the elements that's not included in this budget is what happens at the high school when students request classes. A lot of what we do in terms of staffing and FTE is based on what students are actually requesting for classes. The last thing would be approval by the Amity Finance Committee, final approval by the Amity Board of Education, and then we would go out to the communities in referendum. Over the last 5 years, the Amity budget has averaged 1.24%. $1.24% is not a budget that allows the district to grow in any particular manner. It is a status quo budget that's about maintaining the services that we're putting in place, trying to implement new programs but limiting that based on what funds are available. The current budget calls for an increase in salaries of approximately $620,000. That line includes our contractual obligation for increases in salaries. It includes an additional half-time security guard that was put in place at the high school. And this is on subsequent pages as well. It's described right in the document. And it also includes a reduction of 1 FTE. FTE is full-time teacher equivalent. So it's what one full-time teacher would teach. That's that 1.0 person. And that's approximately $88,000 or $90,000. Benefits increased by $436,000. Benefits include primarily health insurance. Purchase services increased by almost $915,000. That encompasses mostly our obligation for special education, which I will outline a little bit later. You'll notice that every category beyond that is something that we have been able to reduce below what our expenses have been up to this time. Debt service has decreased. Utilities have decreased. We have decreased our equipment budget. We've removed improvement budget and reduced dues and fees for a total increase of $1,681,600, representing 3.78% over this current year's budget. If we take another look at that, this is a graph showing the increase here is salaries required, medical insurance, another obligation, special education, which is that $760,000 out of that purchase services. New requests. The new requests that amount to just about $76,000 represent a new phone system and our contribution to upgrading the servers. The reason for the new phone system, the current phone system has software that won't be supported at the end of this year. And you can see that all other accounts show a decrease of $203,421. If we take a look at each one of those categories in a little bit more depth, you'll see that contracted services is made up of one additional, aside from our contractual obligation, additional special education staff of approximately $96,000, the part-time evening security at the high school, and the credit from the reduction of one certified staff member. Medical insurance, the $427,000 increase, one of the pieces of that we have decided not to contribute to is the OPEB trust, which accounts for approximately $200,000. And lastly, tuition and transportation costs for special education amount to about $762,000. Over the years, Amity has been able to refinance some of its debt, take advantage of the great ratings of the towns, and this year has given us the opportunity to save almost $114,000. The other significant reduction that I'll talk about a little bit later is text and digital resources, which we've removed almost $75,000 from. The new pieces that we're requesting, well, I've already explained. One is the security guard for about $20,000. The telephone system accounts for about $46,000, and the server upgrade. The server upgrade is one that we've already put in place. This is based on the grant from the state. This year it cost us about $8,000, and it'll cost $30,000 for each of the next 4 years.
4 years.
4 years, and then we'll make one small final payment at the end of that. What we've been able to do with the servers is we've been able to take approximately 10 large, cranky, old servers, replace them with 2 physical servers and a number of virtual elements. So, what does this mean in terms of the allocation to the towns? If you take a look at what has happened to school enrollment for all 3 schools, you'll see that we have seen a reduction in enrollment. The enrollment is going down. We actually have recently received information from NESDEC, one of the organizations that helps to do enrollment studies. We'll be taking a much closer look at this in the future as I learn more about schools in the district and how this is going to impact FTE, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But you can notice that there's a net decrease here of 36 students between this year and what we're planning for next year. What that means in terms of the towns, the percent allocated for each of the towns has increased for Bethany by approximately 0.8%, decreased for Orange by about 0.7%, and decreased for Woodbridge for about 0.06%. What this means in terms of the requested budget increase, because we receive other revenues from the state of Connecticut, not all of the 3.78% increase in the Amity budget is actually paid for by the towns. The The actual allocation from the town is a total of 3.32%. Bethany's allocation will increase 7.34% over this year. Orange's allocation will increase 1.83%, and Woodbridge's allocation increases 3.12% based on enrollments. In terms of looking farther into the future, this is a quick spreadsheet of what our debt is in terms of items that we've bonded as a district. And you see that by 2027, we will be paid off. We actually reduce a lot of our obligation each year. And Jack, in about 3 or 4 years, we have a significant decrease in our obligation.
Right, going from 4.8 down to 2019 to 4.4. It's really starting to come down now.
As you take a look at this later and you look at this sheet, there is one point that I want to make on here that might not be clear just in reading the document. If you look at the bottom of the state grant column, you'll see that there's an estimate of $145,000. The state calculates what our payment should be, projects that out. We actually did some refinancing and saved some money that the state may be actually asking us for. They just haven't told us yet. So let's take a look at some big questions that come out of this. We already know what the budget is going to look like, what we've planned for. Some of the things that historically I have learned have come up is a question of the surplus that annually appears when the budget for Amity is done and all presented. If you take a look at the last 5 years, the 5-year average surplus for our budget has been about $500,000. $500,000 represents about 1.2% of our current budget. Of that, the 5-year average of what we've returned, what's been returned to us in special education accounts for about $200,000 of that. Special education is one of the areas that is most complicated to predict. And if I could give you an example, if one student were to go to an institution with a tuition of $120,000 and transportation were to cost $70,000, that's $195,000. So this could, in any year, be the difference between X students and X plus 1 students. Our special ed department does a fantastic job of providing services for students at Amity. And every time that we do that, number one, we generally better serve that student. And number two, we save money that we budgeted because we have an obligation to pay that, and to assume that they would be coming back and not have that money available would put us in a precarious position. Take a look at the 5-year average return to the towns. Roughly half of each year's surplus has been returned to the towns. When we take a look at it in that perspective, the surplus, number one, gets returned, or a large portion of the surplus, I should say. And the reasons for the surplus are ones that really come down to us trying to maximize efficiencies, trying to pull students back into the district. And this year, part of that surplus, which is right now running at somewhere around $450,000 if we project out or approximate what it'll be at the end of the year. Here's an example. The Amity Board of Education hired me. When we hire new staff, there's generally a credit in terms of what we were paying somebody and what we're paying somebody new. Those types of things. When somebody goes on a leave of absence and we hire a substitute, if the leave of absence is unpaid, the substitute gets paid less than them. A lot of these have been realized through staffing changes. There it is. The current projected surplus, and I was just asking Jack, and it was around $440,000. The slide says $587,000. That would be the total surplus, but in that surplus, $125,000 of it is actually on the revenue side, and of course we can't spend more than we've budgeted in our expenditures. So that would be something that would have to be advanced to next year. It wouldn't be something that we could return to the Salaries, $200,000 we've realized, and special education total, $265,000 this year. So that's the surplus. What about staffing and enrollment? If enrollment in the schools has been going down, shouldn't staffing be going down as well? If we were talking about, and if you take a look at this, these are the changes that have been over the last 8 or 9 years. And if you total that, you're talking about a decrease over the last 8 years or so of about 200 students. How do you take 200 students and convert that to full-time equivalent teachers? That's a complicated question. If you were talking about elementary school, you might have a simpler equation. And it's not linear by any means. Maybe it's a step function instead. But if you were talking about elementary school, you might say, well, 24 kids, 25 kids in an elementary classroom. If we gain 25 kids, and hopefully they're all in grade 3, because if we gain 25 kids and they're not in grade 3, they're distributed across grades, it's more complicated. But let's assume they're all in grade 3. Then we add one teacher. If we lose 25 kids in grade 3, we eliminate one teacher. When we move to the middle school and we try to consider how enrollment impacts staffing, and we start talking about the fact that there's a team at the middle school, so I've got grade 7 and 8, and if we assume that those 25 kids all either go into or come out of grade 7, and now I've got 4 or 5 teachers, I've got 5 teachers on that team, plus specials, that are trying to work together to educate this team of kids. So if I decrease 25 kids, I might be able to, oh no, hold on a second. The team's not 25, just one class is 25. It becomes more complicated. It's not a linear relationship because we've added some element of choice and we've added some element that has expanded those opportunities for those kids. It's not one class and one teacher anymore. Extend that to the high school. Students choose courses. We develop programs that allow them to have that selection. Now they have 8 periods from which they can, or for which they can select their courses. It's not as easy to say how many students will transfer into or will translate into how many teachers. But what schools do is they make sure that student requests, contracts, budget are all coordinated so that we're minimizing that FTE that we're using at the schools. And I'll show you in just right here in the next slide, I think. There we go. If you take a look at Bethany Middle School, started at 46.3, now it's 46.4. We've added net added 0.1 FTE in terms of staff. Oh, you know what? One of the things in me coming into this position is that it forces me to ask a lot of questions about how the budget was developed. So when I ask a question like, well, how have we dealt with reductions in enrollment? One way would be share teachers between schools. We have 4 teachers that are shared between schools. As you can probably imagine, it's inconvenient and it's not really the best scenario, but it's something that allows us to meet the needs of kids and not have expanding our staff. What else might we do? Employ part-time teachers. There are 7 teachers in the district that are not full-time, that teach part-time loads because we don't need the full amount of FTE. If you take a look at Orange Middle School, you'll see that they've had a net reduction of 0.3. The high school, in 2007, 2008, there were 167 or so full-time FTE, the full-time equivalent teachers. There was an enrollment bump in the next year, and you can see that it's represented there with an FTE bump. But if you take a look at the net change, you'll see that there's a decrease of about 6 teachers over those last 8 years. That certified column is all of those 3 schools added together. So 259.5 to 255.8 is 6 or so FTE. A reduction of 200 students, a reduction of 6 teachers. I would have to tell you, in my professional opinion, that that's in the appropriate range for 3 schools that are losing 204 students. The reason that we included the other 2 columns is that you'll see that there has been an increase in special ed staff. Special ed staff is not one that we have a tremendous amount of control over when we're talking about the specialized individual needs of students. The last one, other, includes a security guard and somebody who would be in the tech department or part of facilities. One of the ways that we reduce costs is by hiring an additional person. It happens to be in facilities. Instead of outsourcing a lot of the service that's done, we've hired somebody that's part of the district that serves multiple roles, and one of them is servicing equipment. Self-insurance. The district moved to self-insurance 1 year ago?
Yeah.
2
This is the second year.
This is the second year in self-insurance. And some of the questions have been, how are we doing with self-insurance? Was that a good decision? Is that something that we should have done? Is it something that we shouldn't have done? The self-insurance piece, what I can tell you is that we save $500,000 a year in fees. That's a positive. The other piece that's here is that this year we happen to be beyond our budget for healthcare. And when you take a look at the reasons why we're beyond our budget in healthcare, 175% increase in maternity claims. The mid-range of claims in the low tens of thousands of dollars have gone from, well, 5 last year to 13 this year. Large claims, somewhere over $75,000, 0 last year to 1 this year. So we've seen some increases in terms of the expenses. What we do have is we have tried to project out over the next couple of years what this would look like if we're at budget, if we're below budget, if we're slightly above budget. The goal is to create a reserve. If we were to go through this school year, the rest of the school year with on budget, I think that we end with approximately 10% in reserve. About that. Our goal would be to have somewhere between 18 and 25% in reserve. That might be a possibility for any surplus that we have this year is in terms of funding that reserve for medical insurance. Text and digital resources. I told you we made a significant cut, and that significant cut was this year we have a $90,000 budget for text and digital resources. Next year, we're planning on $15,000. And I think the question that begs is, wow, that's a pretty significant cut. Is that enough to support what we're actually trying to do in the schools? You know, we're at an interesting time right now, whether it be we're talking about the Common Core and how we're moving forward with that type of effort. The district has put a lot of effort into making sure that curriculum is consistent with the Common Core. We try to support that with supplemental materials for classes that are consistent with the Common Core. Publishers haven't really had enough time to come out with books that we can verify are consistent with the Common Core. This is a good time not to invest in textbooks, with the exception of AP Chemistry. The Advanced Placement Program has some restrictions on textbooks. If you want to teach AP Chemistry, you can't have a book that's more than 10 years old. Our current book, 10 years old. So we'll be investing in that and a couple of other resources as far as texts are concerned. But we feel pretty comfortable that this is a good year not to invest in additional resources like that. Taking all those things to, now, I already did. Taking all those things into consideration, taking a look at the budget, making sure that every step along the way we're looking at ways to reduce costs and maintain those high standards that Amity has had for students, has brought us to this point where we're presenting a 3.78% budget to the communities. Meeting our responsibility contractually to our staff members, meeting our obligation to kids through offering, continuing to offer expanded programs, and our commitment to the community to reduce costs. Can I answer any questions?
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
You indicated that purchase services is going to increase by $915,000, but special ed is listed as costing about $762,000. What's in the difference between those two in that category?
And by the way, in your packet, you have the complete financial document the spreadsheet is in the end pages there.
I figured Jack could find it quicker than I could.
Let's hope.
If you go to
Yeah.
page 56,
Okay.
all of your purchase services, I think the biggest one in there is pupil transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Which includes a special ed primarily, and then the contracted services with regular 2% increase.
Okay. And the second is, given that you're anticipating a surplus, and I know that you can't do anything with the revenue from special education, is there a way for you to lower the increase to the towns for, this next fiscal year with that money as opposed to returning it to the towns?
We are not allowed to maintain a fund balance. So, aside from investing in something like the reserve for medical insurance, I don't think there's any other way other than returning it to the town.
No, you could put in a capital reserve
Right.
to be different, but to answer your question directly, no, you can't carry that over to,
No, I know you can't.
indirectly.
Yeah, I know you can't carry it over, but are there purchases that you could make that are currently?
I just want to correct that, you can carry it over if the board decides to designate a portion of it in the budget, which has not been discussed or anything like that, so.
But
Can you actually, pre-purchase some things from next year's budget?
And I'm sure Tony would agree with me, the auditors don't like, it's something that you would use specifically for next year, like textbooks. However, there are
Right.
things that you could purchase this year, if the board chose to do that, the superintendent, that might be in next year's budget, that what they are, and so
Okay.
would have to be the superintendent and the board and the finance committee to decide that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that at this point,
Huh?
if we were to consider, and of course, the surplus fluctuates depending on what happens between now and the end of the year, but I think that one of our priorities would be meeting obligations to current employees and meeting obligations to past employees. So in terms of trying to avoid putting off expenses for future generations, one of those things to consider would be funding the OPEB trust, and one of the other things would be the medical insurance reserve. Those would be two big items on the list for
Right.
reallocating some money.
Okay, so did you totally not fund the OPEB trust this year, or just a lower number
It would be at zero for this year.
for this year?
And keeping in
Okay.
mind that means that really what we're losing is we're losing any potential interest on investments from
Sure.
that money.
Of course.
The payments from employees are meeting the costs right now.
Okay. And what is the percentage increase for teacher salaries overall?
Teacher salaries and contractually, it's just over 2%. I mean, as
Okay.
far as the contracted,
right.
yes, just
Yeah.
over 2%.
Percent, okay, thank you.
That's correct.
On page 44, with the enrollment, you've got grades 7 and 8 and 9 through 12, and then other, and maybe I'm just missing something, but what are the other students?
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna step back for 1 second.
Please.
Teacher wage increases have actually been below 2%. The actual wage increase is 1.5%.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Jack, what other things constitute other than
The
tuition
other-
students, open choice,
Tuition students, open choice, and,
the vocational agricultural?
yeah,
Vocational agricultural students.
no, that's
And in general, on your
tuition.
health self-insurance, Does the district have any sort of wellness program for employees, like referral to smoking cessation programs? Anything of that sort to encourage faculty and staff to get exercise, eat healthy, et
Help
cetera?
save money on future
Yeah.
costs?
Right, yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
There's the three over here, it's open choice, tuition, and exchange.
But it actually, it has to,
Oh, okay.
Jack, I'm gonna ask you another question, Jack.
Okay.
Jack has been extremely helpful in this process. I must tell you all that my job is, in coming in short order is big picture and making sure all the pieces go together. Jack knows all the pieces. So help me one of the pieces, Jack.
I'm on the spot.
is very humble.
Are,
all the pieces.
are you familiar with elements of our health plan that encourage wellness? Or Jane?
Yeah,
Yes?
it's not a direct thing, you probably can answer the thing.
At the last teacher negotiations, there was a discussion about building a health and wellness team within, and that was discussed and ready to go. There was no requirement at this point for that, but it's been discussed with the teachers union and administration as kind of a joint effort to try to pull it together. It was, we're looking forward to the next negotiations as well as solidifying around that concept.
Thank you.
And to
Thanks.
take your point a little further, we had built our budget, meaning Woodbridge, based on a 3.12, I believe, Tony. We had that in there, and of course, when I went to the last finance meeting, they had several increases which had to be funded.
Correct.
Special ed, technology item, whatever, which added roughly $300,000 to their budget. And I suggested that perhaps, because ultimately we want to get this budget passed, and it's concerning me about things I'm hearing, but anyway. So I suggested that perhaps they could do exactly what you said.
Yeah.
They are projecting a $500,000 surplus, and I said maybe we could move the $300,000 into this budget to keep it at, say, 3.12, although
Yeah.
that wouldn't cut expenditures, but it would bring the allocations down.
Correct.
And I believe Amity, that wasn't done. They're concerned about this, and Jamie could spend 3 hours on this self-insurance fund and his concerns about
Yeah.
not having enough reserves. So,
$1 million in 2 years.
so it can be done, it has been done, but there are a lot of other pressing needs. That being said, I am concerned with what's going on out in the public that this could be a tough budget because I know Orange is not going to be in favor of this budget. And Orange, for the first time in I don't know how long, has a decrease. Bethany has a huge increase, so I don't know if the Russ Van Burens of the world are going to come out of the woodwork and start suggesting that this budget is not something Bethany can live with. I'm just concerned that, I hate to do this to you, Chip, that this is going to be a tough budget year, in my opinion. Primarily because of, I can't speak for Woodbridge. I think,
Right.
we obviously support, but we can't overcome Bethany and Orange if
No,
it becomes a
we
negative.
can't. Unless we add a few 100,000 more residents over the next couple months.
So I don't know, and I don't know where we're gonna head with this. I mean, obviously, they've made
Right.
the Amity Board has made the decision to use the surplus, et cetera, to fund their, if there's a surplus. to
Oh,
fund
we have not made that decision.
Okay.
I presented those as things that we would certainly
Yeah,
consider. That's, addressing the surplus is not something that the board has discussed.
I mean, you come here
Yep.
to a friendly group, Jim.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be, it's not gonna be that way all the way through. And my main concern, I think all our concerns, Woodbridge has always cherished education, is to get this thing passed.
Right.
And we don't want to get back to where we were with budget rejections, because it can get ugly. And so I would just, hopefully, this is gonna go well, but
Yeah.
my,
I mean, I would suggest that at some point that is considered, because it will bring down the overall allocation to each town. I mean, the other thing is, it's really gonna draw attention that there's been $1 million increase over the last 2 years in terms of the health insurance plan. That's a lot. It's a lot.
I think that, appreciate your comments, and I would welcome any feedback that you have for us that would help us to prepare a budget that would be well received.
It would be wonderful for us, because then we could go back to our number that we were building on. But there's a certain group out there that's negative on this budget. I don't think bringing it down to 3.12 is gonna satisfy them. They're just again, they were against a 0.43% increase, if I remember correctly. So this is gonna fuel the flames, let's say. So I'm just a little concerned that this could be a tough year. I hope it's not, but just doing this as long as I have, I can sense what's out there, so.
I believe that one of the disadvantages, and Jack, please correct me if I'm wrong, in advancing that surplus to the next year and reducing town allocations generally means that the growth in the town allocation the following year might be larger.
If you can't
replicate it.
Right.
Can't replicate it,
Are there any other options with the health insurance that have been looked into at all? I mean, if you're on a health savings account, I mean, how long do you need to remain on that if your costs continue to be this high? That's addressed to all of you.
Well, the enrollment period is the 1st of January, because it's not a calendar year, even though we're a fiscal year. Board, of course, will go into negotiations with teachers next year. So, but right now, the teachers have the option, or actually, everybody has an option of going into the high deductible health savings accounts, as it's been called, and the PPO, and differential being paid by the employee if they don't go on to the platform thing. But just a point about self-insurance by itself. Claims would impact your increase for premiums for fully insured. So your actual percentage increase would go up just by the fact that you have more claims. And the experts in this, such as Jamie Sterling, who does it for a living, says that the claims get bad every 5th year. I'm just hoping that I don't have the bad luck of having 5 years together. But so the decision of going ahead, as the superintendent said, we're saving every year $500,000 plus in administrative costs by staying with self-insurance. The problem is you have to pay the claims, and the ideal is you have your reserve, and we're just starting. We haven't had a chance to build it up, and with the town, you have your general fund that you could reach into if there's a problem. We don't.
Thank you, Jack.
Any other questions? Well, I was remiss, first of all, in not welcoming you, Chip. I just introduced you like you've been here 100 years, but welcome. We're looking forward to working with you.
Me too.
I think you did a great job on your presentation, considering you've had 20 days to own this budget.
I'm one part of a very well-performing team. So they've been a lot of help.
Yeah, sure. You got good people over there.
Yeah.
You got a good board, too. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
for letting me have
Thank you
time.
very much.
Thank you. You're gonna go do this again now?
The time.
The PTA.
At least you got practice now, right? So,
Thank you all
Take care.
for coming. That was really, really nice.
okay. So, let's move on with our agenda, and item 2 is Tony's report. Tony, go ahead.
Thank you. Just keep it there. I'll take care of it for you. Okay. We have a monthly report for through February of 2014, which is essentially a even budget where we don't anticipate much of a surplus, but no deficit is projected at this point either. So our fund balances would be about $4.3 million, or 9.5% of our budget. Some of our positives in revenue: we have a $136,000 surplus in intergovernmental revenue, mostly from a town road aid grant of $120,000 that we had not budgeted for. Department revenues would experience a shortfall of about $667,000. $788,000 from shortfall in golf revenues, as we only recorded revenues through December 31st. But we have $120,000 in surpluses from some other accounts to offset that, namely conveyance fees mostly, and some from town clerk and zoning permits. So, and a slight deficit in interest income. Those are our revenue highlights. Our expenditure highlights for the month. In the Country Club of Woodbridge, we have a surplus of about $367,000 over the budget of $1.4 million. There, in that figure is we had about a little over $1 million, project a little over $1 million in expenses for the golf course. $835,000 of that are from the first 6 months of the golf contract with Billy Casper. The $95,000 for 6 months for the new half of the new contract. In addition, the town will incur about $49,000 in expenses related to the clubhouse through June 30th, and the deficit we discussed last month from the former Country Club fund of $101,000. So that gives you the sort of the difference there. Those are some of the items in that fund, in that account rather. And the waste management, we have a anticipated surplus of about $45,000 due to my primarily reduced tonnage. We're also projecting reduced tipping fees as the town is looking into entering into a new contractual arrangement with the several towns in the area that use the waste treatment plant in Bridgeport, but not using CRRA anymore, which we used to use as an agent for us. So our tip fees will hopefully go from about $68 a ton to about $60 a ton. So that's some good news there. The towns basically got together and decided that CRA was just an added cost to the program, but not really providing the benefit for the cost. We have a anticipated surplus in healthcare for about $65,000. And finally, in the police department, they're currently about $44,000 over budget, police overtime, largely due to some shortage in personnel, a few injuries, 2 injuries, actually there's 3 now. As of when I printed this, it was 2, but one of them hopefully will be coming back shortly. And 3 new hires, which are currently various stages of being hired. So we're monitoring this closely, and there will be a surplus in wages to cover the shortfall. We're just not sure if it'll cover the whole thing. So we're monitoring it very closely with the chief's office to hopefully try to cover this within their budget. But I'll keep you updated each month as we go.
Tony,
Yes,
when the new hires are at the academy, are they on salary?
they are. Yep.
27 weeks, 27 weeks, I think.
Any other questions for Tony on the monthly? Woodbridge Board of Ed, we're gonna be talking a lot about that, so we'll move on from that. Audit update, Tony?
Yes, we have one more year on our audit contract. Well, I had reported that we possibly would have gone out to bid this year, but we actually have one more year. It was a 4-year bid we did last time, so we're on year coming up is year 4. So I wanted to just make sure you were all clear on that. So next year, we'd go out to bid for that. Okay?
Amity is putting theirs out. They had 9 bids. A
Really?
lot more firms are into it, yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of,
We did it last time, we were 3.
huge variety of prices, too.
Huh.
Okay, funding requests. There's several. The first is a line item transfer from within the Country Club of Woodbridge. I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1314-18 in the amount of $49,000.
This is essentially to,
Mike seconded that.
this is to transfer from the account where we had the golf course expenses, which was the Billy Casper account, to the accounts that we need to cover the operating costs for the facility. You'll see that we had a timing issue with the heating oil and had to fill the tank like January 2nd. It would be our cost anyway, whether it's through the Casper contract or through us. So it doesn't, But we had oil left over from the previous year. We had to fill it actually that first week of the year. So that's a big part of it. But you can see the accounts.
Any questions or comments?
You know, I think it's important to be clear that these expenses are to minimally maintain the clubhouse regardless of whether or not we use it.
Right.
Tony checked with the insurance, with our insurance company, with the fire marshal, and these are things that we have to do as long as we have the building.
That's right. There's a few items for the fire marshal had required, and those were the repair and maintenance items. The rest are to keep the building and some equipment parts. The rest are to keep the building, as Ellen indicated.
All those in favor? Aye. Next is line item transfer 131419. The next two are to cover the lovely winter we just went through. And by the way, if you remember at the last meeting, I told them to finalize these because it wouldn't snow anymore,
Right.
and it hasn't.
Right.
So just want to bring that up. I heard a few
Thanks.
chuckles.
We should put our money on you.
There were a few chuckles when I said that.
Say that next November.
Okay, I'm gonna move acceptance as line item transfer 1314-19 in the amount of $33,000 to cover overtime for the snowstorms. I don't think Tony has to comment on that. Are there any questions?
No.
All those in favor? Aye.
She's put in her letter, we had 14 snow and ice events.
Right. And next is why we keep our contingency fund intact towards the end of the year.
Right.
And so this is a request for funding 1314-20 in the amount of $80,000 again to cover the winter storms. So I'll move acceptance. Did I already do that? No?
No.
I'll move acceptance of request for funding 1314-20 in the amount of $80,000.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Aye. I think,
That's true. That's exactly why we do that with contingency.
Exactly. I mean, do you want to mention the three categories? Because that's different than
yeah, this is for gas. 6,000 in gas, 42,000 in sand salt materials, and 32,000 for overtime.
Thank you.
Let me just sign these. And I must say that I think our Public Works did a fantastic job keeping our roads open and clean, and something I think people in this town should appreciate. Okay.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Next is line item transfer 1314-21, and it's actually a revenue transfer to cover pool expenses. So I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1314-21 in the amount of $45,455. Why don't you just quickly?
Sure, absolutely. So the idea is to use the full pool fees that will be coming in this spring to cover the expenditures through June 30th for the pool operation. And the budget that you'll be reviewing later will have the expenditures and revenues for July 1 to June 30th. So this is essentially for a 6-week period to get the pool started up. We've already had some members join, so we're on our way for memberships. And this covers, as you can see, the first, say, 6 months of the year, 6 weeks of the year.
That's a polar bear numbers.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
No, we need a second.
Oh, we need a second?
Second. Oh, go ahead.
Take your pick. All those in favor? Aye. And finally, line item transfer 1314-22 within waste management to cover a deficit through June 30th. I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1314-22 in the amount of $5,000.
Second.
Tell me anything you want to say about this? Or?
It's just for some permitting and some inspection required for Public Works and for the firehouse.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Which leaves us with a contingency balance of $21,271. So not too much left. All right, approval of the minutes. We have a couple here. The first is our February 20th meeting, our regular monthly meeting. I'll move acceptance of the minutes of the Woodbridge Board of Finance meeting on February 20th as presented.
Second.
Any corrections, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Okay. And next is this is from the March 4th meeting when we went over the budget recommendations of the Board of Selectmen and made our budget recommendations. I'll move acceptance of the minutes of the March 4th, 2014 Woodbridge Board of Finance minutes as presented. Any corrections to these or adjustments? All those in favor? Aye. Alright. Next, item 5 is some additional adjustments to the budget that Tony wants to discuss.
Sure. The first thing I want to review is where we are as of your last meeting, and that's the first document. After the adjustments you made at your last meeting, you can see on the flip side it has has a budget of $45,773,248, which is a 0.85% increase. Actual tax increase of $42,636,830, which is a 3.41% increase in taxes, and a 3.05% increase in the mill rate. So I've collected some more information. This is before I found out about what happened this evening.
Before you got banged around tonight.
Right. And there were and I have this in case we want to make any further adjustments, but these are the 5 that I had come up with that we've been working on since the last meeting, and I wanted to just review those. The first is in workers' compensation. We actually discussed this a little bit the last meeting. We have an increase due to the final MIRMA assessment, which is an increase recommended for $57,000 to workers' compensation to pay our final assessment for the outrun of claims from the former risk pool that we were in. The interesting thing about it is if we had compared where our bids were at that time versus what we finally wound up paying, I believe we still paid less into the pool than what we had to have done if we went to our second lowest bidder at the time. So it just turned out that the plan was not funded initially to try to keep members. I think that was the idea, and then it finally went went bankrupt.
So I have a question. Is there a reason why we wouldn't use the general fund to pay this as opposed to?
As opposed to the budget,
Yeah.
because the bill's actually not due till July 1. But the assessment is billed as of July 1. So for MIRMA, because we paid one this July out of the budget,
Right.
right? And so next July there'll be the final assessment. So it's an actual known cost for July, as of due of July 1. It's not like we can pay it now.
Okay.
That's pretty much the reason. The next one is the bridge reserve, and the bridge reserve is an increase of $50,000 to help complete the funding of the Merritt Avenue Bridge. Now that the bridge's construction has begun, this is for all of the costs related to that replacement. And the bridge is funded 80% by the federal government and 20% by the town. So this includes design, construction, there's work by the water authority that had to take place. There's all the aspects of bridge construction. I suppose this you could transfer from fund balance if you wanted. If we had contingency remaining, I would have used it for this. But this is something you could, if you wanted to go through the process of transferring from fund balance, you could.
Or we could just increase what we're going to carry forward.
I mean,
What we're carrying forward from fund balance, the money
Yeah.
we're carrying, we could just increase that by 50,000, couldn't we? Would that have the same effect? Am I losing it?
It would have the same effect. You might as well just sort of allocate to the bridge reserve.
All right.
The third one is a decrease of $70,000. The our original amount for healthcare was about 10 or 11%, I think it was. And then when we did the selectmen budget, it was reduced to 9.5% increase. And our latest estimate is an increase of about 5%. So we can reduce our healthcare budget by $70,000. It's a combination of all three accounts. And there may be even a slight increase, possibly, that we can possibly do at your next, after the hearing. We're hopeful to refine it even further through the usual process of getting our pricing. And but right now, a 5% increase is the most it will be. So. Okay.
Yep.
Right.
And next is the Board of Education, and there's an attached letter here. I think mostly deals with the fifth one, so I'll go over the fourth one. First is the a decrease of $40,000 in the capital budget for technology. The Board of Education has a possible surplus this year, which I'm sure Sandy, you know something about this too, right? They went through this in the Finance Committee, right? So the recommendation we have is to reduce the technology budget by $40,000 with the understanding that the board would purchase $40,000 in technology equipment from their available surplus. This is in addition to the $26,000 in kitchen equipment that was already removed by the Board of Selectmen. So that would be $66,000 in purchases. This is sort of what you were asking the Amity to,
Yes, exactly.
essentially, right? Is what Beecher is doing. Yeah. And the last is, you can see an attached note by Dr. Stella and Margaret Hamilton and Steve Fleischman and the School Board Finance Committee. Is on the reverse of this letter. Basically explains that due to, as we had cost savings in health insurance and some retirements, they're indicating that we can reduce their budget by $145,000 to 1.78% increase, which I've done. So if you include all those changes, the increase would be 2.69% for the mill rate over the prior year. However, I was busy doing this work here while they were.
Okay.
We have to add to our budget $90,990 for the change that was discussed with the Amity, because we were at 13.3 million and their budget was 13.39. Let's see, I got it in here.
$13,391,853.
Right. So we're at 13.3 and they're 13 in 863 and they're at 13,391. So that's an increase of 90,990.
But that's as it sits today.
Yeah.
That's as it sits today, right?
That could change.
It could.
But if that were the
If
case.
that was the case.
If their budget were to pass as they're presenting it.
As it is
Would
today,
pass, and
it's gonna cost us $90,000.
you do have two other opportunities, of course. After the public hearing, you could make a change, or you could make the change now. You could wait and see how things progress and make the change then.
No, we've got to put in what they're.
It's up to you. You know, I would suggest you put it in what's in here.
I would absolutely.
Yeah, and then if it changes, then after the hearing, you could, make a change then.
It's only going to change if the referendum goes down.
They won't make a change themselves, you think?
I don't think so. They want to increase it even more. Well, I'll get it to them by the end.
Okay, all right. So I'm not sure if anyone else has any other suggested changes. If not, the budget increase is 2.9%, and that would be a budget of $45,716,238, and a tax increase, which is a 0.73%. A tax increase of $42,579,820, which is a 3.28% increase. And a mill rate increase, a mill rate of 35.13, which is 0.99 mils and is a 2.9% increase.
Right, so we're still under 3%,
Still under 3%.
even with the Amity
Correct.
jump.
Yep.
I'd just like to say at this point, Ellen and Tony and I met with Dr. Stella, was it last Wednesday? I get confused. It was a week ago Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah.
And he made this presentation to us. And the questions I had, he answered. My first question was, what can we do, how can we use this surplus to reduce the impact on taxpayers? And we came up with they've got a bunch of things they're paying for out of this too. That they feel that some furniture, some library books, all small things, which I believe total about $120,000.
Yeah.
The biggest one is $30,000 for, he's anticipating expenses once this building project takes place of moving furniture and classrooms and all that.
Right.
And was receptive to the idea of using 40,000 of it for technology. And then my next question was going to be, well, can you now reduce your budget based on this? And he had it all figured already. So I just want to comment that the cooperation of Dr. Stella, Al Pulio, and the Board of Education is it's excellent compared to where we used to be. This is the kind of cooperation. We're all on the same objective to provide the best education we can. But it's nice to know that, I mean, the Board of Education can take that year-end surplus, and they can go out and buy anything they want with it. They're under no obligation to work with us. But thankfully, Dr. Stella has been, as he's always reminding us, very transparent. And it's good that we have this kind of relationship where, obviously, this is how we're getting this budget under 3%. So I just wanted to compliment Dr. Stella and the whole staff and board over there for working with us. We have faith in what they do, we believe in what they do, we trust what they do, and that's important, because for many years we didn't have that, so it's really a good thing. So we're still under, we were shooting for under 3%, and we're there, even with this jolt, and maybe there's gonna be a few more.
There are maybe a few more things we're currently working on
But before I get
to
into
have for after the hearing.
But before I get into my liaison report, to answer, there's members of the board who want to put more and more in there to build up this health insurance reserve. They want to fund OPEB. I mean, they just really don't want to do without. And I was sitting at the meeting just shaking my head saying, you guys, your ultimate objective has got to be to get this budget passed. It's going to be a tough sell. Orange is going to vote it down, I can tell you right now. And I believe it's going to be the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance who are going to be voting it down. And Bethany, I'm sure, is there's got to be rumblings going through Bethany. This is going to be a huge impact on Bethany's taxes. So, you know, I tried to convince them to, and I don't even know if it's going to matter. And as I said, take $300,000 out of that surplus, which what you were suggesting.
Yeah.
You can't reduce expenses by that, but you can reduce the allocations to the towns to get it back to that
Correct.
3.12. But
Yeah.
if anything, there are people on that board who would be willing to raise it up to 5%. So, yeah, well, they want to build the health insurance reserve up to 700,000 or 800,000. You heard he said it's.
Some people are gonna turn it down because they think it's not enough money?
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
you're saying?
People said that at the meeting. I'm voting for it, but I think there's not enough money in this budget.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so, I'm just worried. And I told them, I'm not saying anything here that I didn't say it at the
What
finance
kind of a
meeting.
history do they have based on self-insurance? Are they paying their claims? I mean,
Tremendous claim increase.
what I'm saying, part of the, in
Yeah,
other words, when you
600,000.
self-fund, you're like an insurance company, you need to build
Right.
reserves to have.
That's right.
They had,
That's correct.
they had them, but they didn't through them this year.
Yeah, so-
There's a chart here. The claims in July, they've budgeted $319,000 a month for claims. They've got, the months have gone, remember, 319. They've had 430, 381, 306, 312, 327, 416, 402, 238. Jack has taken a worst-case scenario look at this, and So they're really concerned that, and, you know, Jamie Sterling, this is what he does for a living, and they've basically eaten through the surplus they had. They began the year with a $700,000 balance, and they're projecting perhaps 46,000. And you can't operate a fund of this size with $46,000 in the bank.
No,
It's gonna- it's
no.
gonna
You
want-
can't, if you're on a cash basis, especially
So,
if you have no fund
You
balance.
know, if,
Yeah.
they're talking about, that one board member, you know, knew that I said, why don't you consider moving some of the surplus to offset, and they're, no, we're gonna put it in OPEB. You know, that doesn't do a thing for
No.
education or whatever,
No.
just makes you feel good about it, but, I don't know, it's gonna be, they might learn it the hard way that, all you need is somebody to stir up the pot, and there's a guy stirring up the pot, believe me. And they could have a problem with this budget, so.
So
we
is
will
it the
see.
same situation in Bethany, or is it because there's such a large increase that they?
Oh, yeah, no, it's just, I was talking to the chairman of the Board of Finance in Bethany, and he's saying, this is, you know, obviously they've got other things they've got to worry about, but this is a huge impact.
Sure.
Because, you know, Bethany's budget is smaller compared than ours.
Oh, yeah.
So when you hit them with, their increase is what?
So they'll vote against it because it's too high.
I don't know that
and-
they'll vote against it, but I can tell you that there's, rumors
7.34.
that there's people from Orange who are calling people from Bethany to tell them that they should vote against it. But, yeah, Bethany's going up $636,000. That's a huge
It's
increase.
huge.
It's a big increase.
So.
For them, their budget's small compared to ours.
If it passes in Woodbridge and it passes in Bethany, does it pass, or is it based
Oh,
on
no,
the
no,
number?
it's the number, the raw
It's
numbers.
totally
It's
numbers.
the raw numbers. And, you know, honestly, as somebody, to see that, the football field go down, huge numbers went down, you know, and Woodbridge too, which never happens, so. And if you get the word out, you're gonna be seeing a lot of articles in the paper, I'm gonna predict, about this Amity budget and surpluses and this, and they've got $500,000, and so, I was trying to convince them to do whatever they could, but
Yeah.
they're not, they're selling this, they're selling the theory that an average 1.2 increase over the past 5 years, and it's time to pay the piper. That's basically what they're saying, so.
Has a referendum date been set?
Yeah, I think so.
It's, I can probably have it here. Is it in this package? Probably is. It's usually in May.
Yeah.
It's the first week in May usually.
Yeah, I'm sure it's in here somewhere.
That's right, you don't need to.
So, we'll see. I tried to tell them, but believe me, they're looking to they're members of the board who were willing to put more in, so. Okay, so, but again, I think, thankfully, the Board of Education in Woodbridge came through, and that's why it's gonna work, because they trust us and we trust them, and, it's a good thing, so.
But just to understand the Amity budget a little
Yeah.
bit better, the bulk of the increase are these unanticipated medical claims,
Yeah.
right? It's $1
It's
million.
a big problem,
Yeah,
big problem.
but it doesn't look like they are making any kind of drastic program improvements or anything of that sort.
No.
It's just trying to keep pace with their obligations to their employees.
It's the risk you take with self-insurance.
Yeah.
They've had some huge claims. They said maternity, but I guess there's been a couple of really illness claims, huge. And they're not going away, they're gonna continue. So,
If you just look at what the charges are, some of these bills when people go in the hospital a day and two, and the bills are $90,000, it doesn't take much to go through $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about how many teachers, how many people they have insured there, I mean, and how many on a family plan, I mean, that's really nothing.
That's the risk, Tony, I was talking to Tony about it. He
That's
said,
right.
It's, from a budgeting point of view, it's a nightmare, because you can never budget with a self-employed man.
Self-insurance is tough.
Self-insurance, you never know what the claims are gonna be, so.
The percentage is staggering.
Oh.
So, not that many years, there's almost no growth. And then $1 million. That's
Well-
a massive percentage. When it's $3 million, then it goes to 4.
You know, Jack is an ultra-conservative person, so his ultra-conservative approach is the worst-case scenario, which I think scared the board.
Did they have an
tremendously.
actuary working on this, or?
I think so, yeah. I hope so.
I would hope so too.
So his worst-case scenario is frightening.
Yeah.
You know, like they said, it's in every, I mean, actually, the claims did go down. And if the rest of the year stays below that budget, they'll be okay by the end of the year. Although not with the $1,400,000 they want to have in reserve, so. Okay, we'll get more into that. Reschedule, you want to reschedule it after the budget hearing? Is that what that's
So you have
about?
to actually vote on a recommendation to recommend a
Oh, okay.
budget to the town. To the
Okay, so you have
hearing.
that number, Tom?
Yeah. So the
Why don't you read it off and then I'll make the motion to approve
Okay.
it, to accept it.
the total expenditures 45,716,238. Total non-tax revenues 3,136,418. Total tax amount to be raised by taxes 42,579,820. Mill rate 35.13. That's it. Increase of 2.9%.
Did you get all that, Karen?
Got it.
I'll make a motion.
All right, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Reschedule April meeting date. Is that to move it after the budget? hearing?
After the hearing, yeah.
Okay. We need a motion for that?
No, it's just, I don't know, do you? I don't think so.
You set your dates, we set our dates through a motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it should.
I'll move that we reschedule our April meeting date to, from April 17th, which is probably what it was, till April 24th.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. First Selectmen's report, Ellen.
Thank you. A couple of things I'd like to mention for people who live in the area and others as well. There is work beginning on the Route 63, Route 67 intersection on April 1st. I think they're widening, they're adding a turning lane and a light and other improvements. So work begins April 1st and could last as long as 8 to 10 months. So it's happening. I think it's going to be a great improvement, but take a little while. United Illuminating has asked us to remind people that it is prohibited to put anything on UI poles, no posters, no objects. It's a safety matter, and it's important not to do that. I want to mention a few things that have been going on. On February 14th, we had Wear Red Day here at Town Hall, and that was to support heart health for women. That was a very successful event. And there will be a Heart Walk Day on May 3rd at Savin Rock. Anyone who's available to go to that. I attended Rosa DeLauro's meeting for mayors and first selectmen in the 3rd Congressional District. It was very interesting. Rosa gave us an update on what was happening and what's not happening in Congress, including some budget updates. The Blue and Gold Banquet was held at Assumption Church, and that's where the Cub Scouts cross over the bridge to become Boy Scouts. It's a very nice ceremony, and the kids were very excited. They choose their Boy Scout troops. I was at the CROG meeting. That's our Council of Governments, the South Central Connecticut Council of Governments, and it's really it's a very good venue for sharing ideas and for programs that encourage cooperation among the towns. I know Tony is working on a purchasing cooperative, which I think could benefit us quite a bit. And they also talked about the Metro North issues, which was interesting, about how Metro North, had been so focused on punctual trains that they had sacrificed safety. Now they were going to go entirely the other way to safety, and were recommending that people take an earlier train than they would otherwise take to get to where they need to go. So there was a little pushback on that, and hopefully Metro North will be coming to discuss that a bit further. Right.
One
Yes.
or the other.
Right. Right. We're hoping,
Can't have both, right.
something for both. The Volunteer Fire Association had their annual Snowflake Dance, which was lovely and very well attended at the Woodbridge Club. I was at the Rotary Breakfast on March 7th, and they were very interested in solar opportunities, and I spoke to them about some of the things we're doing in town and exploring. And Betsy Yagla, who was here last time, who you met, who's our assistant town, what's your title? Administrative officer, is really focusing, one of the things she's doing is focusing on energy programs, and particularly solar, so that we can be sure we're taking advantage of everything there is, both for residents and for businesses. So we'll have more on that. And speaking about that, we are making progress on the microgrid proposal. We had to meet with Amity to be sure that there were no objections from the Amity point of view, because they are a very large part of the microgrid project, and that's all gone very well. Tony was at a couple of meetings also. The Massaro Farm annual meeting was on March 9th, and I've been attending that meeting as a member and lover of Massaro Farm, and this year the bylaws were changed so that now the first selectman is an ex officio non-voting member of Massaro Farm, which I think is a really important development. We own the property. We should have a close working relationship with Massaro Farm. So that was a good development there. On March 11th, I and others were at the Senior Center St. Patrick's Day luncheon, where we helped serve lunch, and it was a delicious lunch. They really, the food there is terrific. So that was great. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all you did?
It's not all, but I didn't.
That was.
Okay, liaison reports. I won't belabor the Amity thing, but the surplus, as of the end of February, is $587,309, which, and my experience has shown me that as the year gets larger, because things just don't come through. So, and you know, one of the fellow from Orange who is a big critic of this is Jim Leahy. I've mentioned his name before, and he's criticizing it again that they've got the surplus. But in the past, they've used it for certain things and they've returned it to the town. But they're not talking about that this time around. They're talking about using it all, which will really rile some people up. So more to come on that. I think everything else that was covered at the meeting, you've heard. Their biggest concern is the health insurance reserve, and we'll see what happens there. Hopefully Jack's dire prediction, not even a prediction, his worst case scenario won't come to pass, and they'll end the year better than the worst case scenario would indicate. So, but I'll keep you posted as to, I was hoping they would do what I said with trying to keep the increase at 3.12, but it didn't happen, so more to come.
And it does say in their budget on page 12 that we are fortunate to have a projected surplus this fiscal year to help pay claims and add to our low reserve balance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's in there that they're.
Yeah,
That's what they.
And if there's more, they're going to put. I can see some of them on the board truly don't understand OPEB. They're like crazy that they're not funding OPEB. You know, it's really, as I think Chip said at the meeting, it's we're way ahead of the game by even having. They got $1,300,000 in there, but like I said, we'll see.
I don't. I wasn't able to attend their meetings.
Okay.
I wasn't able to attend Human Services, but the EMS met, and AMR continues to have above average performance, and the board is obviously watching, and they're really doing an extraordinary job looking at all the information and seeing what type of calls come in, and falls continue to be the call by a long shot. So they put out quite a few articles and whatever to fall prevention and risk. They might even be handing out light bulbs to just keep the lights on all the time so you don't fall going in a dark stairwell or whatever. But so anyway, they continue to do a good job.
Okay. Andrew?
Another cancellation.
Another cancel. Okay. David?
Didn't make recognition.
Okay. Sandy?
Well, the Library Commission had a meeting Monday, March 10th, and I'm pleased that the Library Trust issue has now been resolved and they've received their money.
Right.
And that's set up on a regular schedule. It's $1,600, but it rightly comes to the library and should be on an ongoing basis. The elevator unfortunately has been out of service due to the inability to find parts to repair it. So they think that it may need to be replaced.
That's
And that,
expensive.
yeah, that will be expensive.
So we've, there's an update since that meeting that we
Okay.
think we found some parts,
Oh, great.
and we just have to do some electrical improvements so that a surge won't knock it out again, because if it happens again, we might not get the parts. So that's part of the issue is ordering the parts and then putting surge protection on it so that it doesn't blow out the same.
Well, can we order
Infrastructure.
multiple parts?
Yeah, right. Stock them. I did, as a matter of fact, I did tell them that. I said if they have more than one, please get it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we might have solved that problem,
Okay.
hopefully.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good news. They may be adding another branch library from East Haddam to Lyon, and that will probably be the end of looking for more libraries. They did pursue the logo with the town, so I'm very glad that we had that discussion at our last meeting. And 7 members of the library staff went to the library conference in Cromwell, which is great for them from a continuing education perspective. And they had attendance of 150 people at their Super Bowl Sunday event with Jester Jim. So that's been one of their highest attended events. And customer,
Where'd they put them all?
they were all
All over the library?
over the library. Yeah, yeah. And their customer appreciation week went very well. It was very well received in terms of letting people return books and other types of materials that they borrowed, and welcoming people as opposed to slapping their hand. And they use MailChimp for their newsletter that they send out, and their subscriptors went up to 104. It increased by 15. But I think this points out again that if we can do something with our website that would just push out information or let people sign up to receive different, communications and publications, that would be helpful in the long run. So, and then unfortunately, the finance committee meeting was changed to a half hour earlier, so it overlapped with this. But I did speak with Dr. Stella on the phone, and he went over with me all of the detail of the meeting that he had with you. And I also want to compliment him and Al in terms of their transparency and level of detail and showing, where is there a surplus? Was there money that they, did not have to spend? What would they like to actually spend it on that would, reduce the budget for this coming year, but also needs that they hadn't anticipated for this year? And so I think that they've come forward with a very, very respectable proposal that helps them and helps the town too. So.
Thank you. Anything else? I'll move adjournment.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. March, let's see, April 21st on a Monday night in the Center Gym. Please be there to help me. 'Cause